Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition, July 3rd, our final show of the week this week. I hope everybody has a great 4th of July holiday, but welcome into Wednesday's Birds 365. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, man?
Doing well. A little bit of info coming out because of Hard Knocks. And I mentioned to you before the show started, Zander, last year was Bijan 365. I'm starting to feel like this is Saquon 365.
Yeah, so a little bit came out. I didn't catch all of it on Hard Knocks from the Giants GM and the owner. The owner wanted to keep Saquon Barkley. Joe Shane, or however
He's got to talk about it. I get a kick of these owners, man. They don't get it. They don't freaking get it. They got to. It's almost hilarious. They're almost more like fans, but obviously they have tremendous amounts of power, and he's got to waste his time explaining the obvious, man. That's what I took from it.
Which is what, John, in your opinion? What is the obvious?
Well, as Joe Shane said, you're paying the guy $40 million. He's talking about Daniel Jones. It's not to hand the ball off to a $12 million running back, which, you know, it's ironic because he's coming to a team that's paying the quarterback $50 million.
That's what I was
they're going to, and people want him to hand off to the $13 million running back. But in Joe's case, remember, they've been through it for 6 years. All right. And one of the things that John Mara said was basically, we haven't proven we had a good offense without him. They haven't proven they have a good offense with him, which is kind of the point. It hasn't worked. Now, where I give the Eagles some deference is, you know, they're in a different position. They already have pieces in place. So maybe as the final piece of the puzzle, it's a better argument. It's a
different scenario for sure.
It's a completely different scenario. This is a rebuilding team that has to figure out what they have in the quarterback. And, you know, leaning and whatever you think of Daniel Jones or not, I think he's, you know, my old partner, Jody, couldn't stand him, thinks he's terrible. I think he's average. That's it. I think he's a little bit underrated by people like Jody and who think he's completely, you know, he was Joe Montana compared to what they were rolling out at quarterback last year when he was hurt. So you saw the difference there. Ultimately, he's an average NFL quarterback. You're not going to go anywhere with him, and they probably overpaid. Not probably, they overpaid for him. They're going to move on somewhere down the road. But they're not in a position to pay a veteran running back $13 million, and they were looking at $12 million or something of that nature, as Joe Shane said. But, you know, he's got to talk John Mara into it. It's like, man, that's the easiest decision in the world for the New York Giants. Like, we love you. I mean, but we got to rebuild this thing.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, knock on Saquon. It's just you
not
don't
at
build
all.
your football team running back first. The Eagles didn't do that. You know what I mean?
No, not even remotely. He's the last piece in theory. The exact opposite. And it, like I said, it's a better argument for the Eagles, but the part that's kind of the same as, though, you know, again, he's a complimentary piece here. You're not the guy here. You're not paying the quarterback $50 million to hand the ball off. You're not paying A.J. Brown what you're paying A.J. Brown to hand the ball off. You're not paying Devontae Smith what you're paying to hand. He's the complimentary piece here. So, you know, I don't care about Jeffrey Lurie's money. I don't know about you, Zander. From a standpoint, if I'm an Eagles fan, I don't care what Jeffrey spends. Did he overspend? Sure. Who cares? They had the money, you know. As the last piece of the puzzle, I'm fine with it. As the first piece of the puzzle, that's why the Giants were the Giants. With them.
Anyway, their trash is our reward. So we end, you know, one man's trash is another man's treasure. That's what they say. So we end up with Saquon Barkley. I think it's a good fit here in Philadelphia. But it was interesting. Did you hear also Joe Schoen talking about the comparison of, we wouldn't win with Patrick Mahomes with this team or whatever it was. And
This
I'm like,
offensive line, yeah.
yeah, it's offensive line. So,
Yeah, I mean, he's right. You're not. I mean, they'll be a lot better, but
yeah,
yeah,
a little bit
that's
of
yeah,
embellishment, but yeah.
that's yeah. I think a lot of people don't understand that. Even Patrick, what he's trying to say is needs pieces in place, and he's right. I mean, they'd probably be a playoff team because he's that good. But yeah, they're not winning anything until they improve that offensive line. And hey, that the Eagles have known that for years. Give the Eagles credit. That's where they build first, and it's shown over the years how successful it's been. Yeah, they got to fix it. The ironic thing is the Giants have tried to fix the offensive line. They just can't. Um, they drafted tackles in the first round. Andrew Thomas has turned into a good player. Evan Neal has not. They drafted Will Hernandez, I believe, in the second round. Um, I think John Michael Schmidt was a third round pick, maybe somewhere in that range. They keep trying, but they haven't been able to fix it, which also points to Jeff Stoutland. You not only have to get the talent, you have to develop the talent. And they haven't been able to do that on the offensive line. So yeah, they gotta find a way to fix it, whether it's drafting, more finished talent. I always say, you know, I don't give the Eagles any credit. I'm sorry. I don't give the Eagles any credit for developing Devontae Smith. He was literally a finished product when he got here. That's not an insult. You've seen them try to develop a Jalen Rager type or a Nelson Aguilar type. It hasn't gone as well, to say the least. And maybe they have to go that route until they prove they can develop some offensive linemen, which they haven't been able to do.
No, they have not. And to our credit here in Philadelphia, John, I did this research the other day. And in 2012, I was, how old would I have been in 2012? I guess I would have been around like 13 years old or 14 years old. I was born in 98. That's the last time the Eagles' offensive line was ranked out of the top 10. I mean, I can't even remember when we didn't have a top 10 offensive line here in Philadelphia. Now they were 10th ranked in 2015. They were 10th ranked in 2020. But I mean, this team they just always have a good offensive line. I've taken it for granted at this point, but just because it's become the norm for me. We always have a good offensive line. It's not something we talk about in Eagle Land, having to get your offensive line back. It's really tremendous work by the front office, and it started with Chip Kelly in a way, who drafted Lane Johnson, and really started from there. Obviously, all the pieces that they've had now. So just can't relate to the problems that the Giants have.
Yeah, well, that tells you your youth, because I mean the Eagles for many, many years didn't have an all-pro offensive. In fact, the spike of the Jeff Stoutland area is crazy when you look at the entire history of the organization. They never had Pro Bowl offense, never mind all pro, and now it's become a constant thing. Yeah, it hasn't always been that way.
I know it hasn't always, but shoot, the modern world, it certainly has been. I mean,
Oh yeah,
modern NFL, yeah. I mean,
basically between Bob Brown and Jason Peters, you got a big, just empty pool of disaster on the offensive line. And
I should correct myself. It did start with Andy Reid, not Chip Kelly. The one that Chip Kelly drafted.
No, yeah.
Is
Well,
Johnson,
Jeff got here. Jeff Stoutland got here with Chip Kelly, but no, yeah, it definitely started with Andy Reid, because he, everything the Eagles do started with Andy Reid, the modern Eagles. Everything about their organization on the football side stems from Andy Reid and his imprint on how to build a winner. Every single thing. And I mean that. Every single thing starts with Andy Reid. And they were very lucky, they hired him, so I won't even use that term. And Jeffrey Lurie deserves credit for seeing something. And I still say, it was time for Andy to leave. He had a lot of family problems at the time, obviously. Everybody's got a shelf life. You got to move on. But they were smart enough to realize, yeah, we got to move on because of all that stuff. But we don't have to move on from the philosophies and his understanding about how to build a football team. They understood that, hey, we should keep that. And they have for the most part. Chip, ironically, would be the closest to moving away from it. And, they were okay for the first 2 years, but, we know what happened there. And then they went right back to Andy.
Suplex City says, Zander, look up Ron Solt. He was Buddy's big addition. Oh, that's some intel I will look into over our extended break.
A lot of knee problems for Ron Solt. A lot of knee problems. A lot of steroid problems as well. Different era. Era.
Definitely a different era. But like I said, just different problems here in Eagle Land than they have in New York Giants. But it was interesting to hear kind of the inside the room of the GM talking with the owner about Saquon Barkley. Anyway, now he's an Eagle. Eagle fans rejoice. We got the running back. And everybody's excited about him, rightfully so. So we'll see what he's able to do for the Eagles this year. John, we only have about 6 minutes until we have Mike Gill. So we'll have Mike Gill in hour 1 today, BLG in hour number 2, as we usually do on Wednesdays. Last show of the week, my man, last show of the week. And then we're really on a run to training camp. They report on the 23rd. So we won't be back until, I guess it would be the 7th, or would that be the 8th? I guess next Monday would be the 8th. So we won't be back until, the 8th is next Monday. And then just 2 weeks, 2 full weeks of shows. And then the Eagles are off and running at training camp. So exciting times. The season is right around the corner, everybody. We're going to learn a lot more about this team. We're going to learn a lot more from John McMullen, who will be down there for training camp. So good stuff. If you're in the chat, I appreciate you. SMD Eagles, Suplex City, Slagger, Dank, Devontae, Yale, Eduardo, Madness, anybody I missed. We appreciate you guys being here. Rashid, Cody K. We appreciate all you guys being here this morning. Make sure you guys drop a like on the show. Help us get over 100 likes during the live program. Bob Brown, good morning, brother. Johnny Mac, let's do one. We'll do one defensive guy. If you missed yesterday's show, Johnny Mac and I dove into the defense, and it's kind of a stat projection, but we know that stats don't tell the full story on defense. So just an overall impact projection per player. We got through the front 4. We got through Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. We did Nolan Smith, and then we did Bryce Huff. So Johnny Mac, let's go to Josh Sweat. What are your thoughts on Josh Sweat coming into this year? What type of impact can he have? Kind of been a streaky player, hasn't been too consistent with the Eagles, but there's been times when he's been an absolute beast. What do you expect from Josh Sweat this year?
Well, I think, Josh is another guy that probably doesn't get lumped into the playing time conversation enough as he should. I mentioned kind of at the end of yesterday's show about his injury dating back to college. The Eagles had always been very dating back to high school, really. The Eagles have always been very cognizant of limiting his snaps and putting him on a pitch count. And up until his breakthrough year, which was 2022, when he really performed well, and they were like, maybe he's over it. So, and then all of a sudden he's out there just, if you look at Josh, and I'll pull it up real quick. So 2019, when he became a part-time player, 352, 422, 654, which was his career high in 2021, 587. So right in the same range when he had his best year by far in 2022. And then last year, he's up at Hassan Reddick levels at 828. And I think you saw, Josh Sweat, like a lot of players, darn good. First half of the season plus, stretch, invisible. And I think with his case, you're talking about almost 200 snaps more than he's ever played before.
Yeah.
So when it all kind of fits together, that's another part that drives me crazy. It's a mosaic. When you talk about the defensive front as a whole, you want to have that rotation. Probably want to have 8 guys in the rotation in a best case scenario. And, if you don't feel comfortable enough to play Nolan Smith snaps or Jalix Hunt or somebody else that's a younger player that's unproven, if Brandon Graham at his age can't play a certain number of snaps, it's got to lean towards Hassan and Josh Sweat last year, and that's what happened. And he played too much, and I think it affected him. And then I think he was in that category, like Hassan Reddick, like Jalen Carter. I think everybody sort of got undisciplined late, and I think this is another criticism of Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. Guys were going into business for themselves and trying to get sacks because what gets you paid as a pass rusher. And you lose some of that discipline in the pass rush, and all of a sudden the wheels come off. I think that's what happened. Now, the good thing is, the Eagles kind of did that. We're going to keep one of them, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, and Josh agreed to come back at a rework number for less money, and then it made the decision easy. So from his standpoint, this is a contract year, so he's got to perform to get, his next contract, whether it's here or somebody else. So maybe that sparks him a little bit. But there's some negatives to that. As I just said, he's going to want sacks. That's how you get paid.
Right.
You're in the same boat from that perspective. But he's a good player. And he's got to get back, very similar to Jalen Hurts. He's got to get back to the 2022 version. And then you're fine.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for Nolan Smith, right? I mean, ideally, you want Josh Sweat's snap numbers to come down because he obviously wasn't able to produce at the same level because of how much he played. SMD Eagles in the chat points out kind of looked like Sweat was favoring his knee. I agree. He definitely didn't look fully 100%. He did have that, as John talked about a little bit yesterday, that catastrophic knee injury back in the day. But I think it's a good thing, if you can get that rotation up and get Nolan Smith more snaps out there. So we'll see how it ends up playing out. I think Sweat.
But speaking of Josh, since I brought it up, and I know we got to get the mic, and I'll just end on this to kind of tell you what bullshit sacks are, and the perception of them. He had 13 sacks in 2022 total when we're talking about. And these are PFF numbers, so they do things a little bit differently. He had 7 last season. But he had 16 quarterback hits in 2023 versus 7 in 2022. He had 45 hurries in 2023 versus 23 in 2022. But this is a league problem. This is not only they pay guys who get sacks. It's dumb, And most of the times it takes care when you're talking about the best pass rushers in football, whether it's Myles Garrett or Nick Bosa or Micah Parsons or Max Crosby. Those guys are getting pressures and sacks. So when you get to that level, it kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, that's a different tier, though.
Yeah, but when you're in the nuance level, man, paying guys on sacks is complete bullshit. But they do it, so it's a league problem.
Yeah, they definitely do it. Let's get to our commercial break. As you mentioned, Mike Gill in the green room, in the waiting room. So we're going to get to Mike Gill. Thanks, everybody, for being here this morning. Make sure you hit the like. Stay tuned on Birds 365. Mike Gill coming up next.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Up. And go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365, the final edition of the 4th of July week, joined now by Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN Down the Shore. Mike Gill, what's going on, man? How you doing? Oh, I don't have your mic, Mike.
Are you muted? Mike Gill. The dulcet tones of Mike Gill. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. All right, hopefully.
Let me, Mike. I'm going to drop you off and then rejoin. I'll bring you back up. Let me drop Mike off.
Hopefully.
Mike. And normally, if they can't hear us, we can't hear them. But he could hear us clearly.
Yeah,
we couldn't hear Mike, so we'll get Mike back up. See what he has to say about some of the stuff we've been talking about, getting ready before.
I wanted to ask Mike. It's Mike, obviously, 97.3 ESPN South Jersey, down the shore if you're local to the Delaware Valley. But, obviously he talks about all sports in this dead period. As I called it, a dead awakening, it seems. I mean, I think everybody knows if you talk about, and here's Mike. Let's see. Did we got you? Say something, Mike. Well, nothing yet.
Mike. What are you using there, Mike? You got a different microphone or something?
No, the
Click
usual
the settings on the StreamYard there at the bottom, Mike. Sorry, guys, doing a little production on air here. Click settings on StreamYard, then you'll see an audio button, and then you should be able to pick a mic.
Maybe it's a mic problem. But I want to. So what? While Mike's doing it, he could probably hear me.
Yeah.
The lone dead period for the NFL is right now, obviously, as we talk about. It seems like, during this period, Zander, and if we ever get Mike, the Eagle, I think everybody knows the Phillies are the best team in town, so to speak. They're a legitimate World Series contender. Yeah, we got you, Mike. We can hear you banging.
Oh, okay. I don't know what happened.
There we go. So I started that, this dead period. I think everybody knows the Phillies are the best team in town. Now that the Sixers have added Paul George, they still have a lot of work to do. They got like 10 players and, the Knicks beat them with their depth. They need to add depth. I don't know how, but they got to figure it out. But a lot of people think they've surpassed the Eagles as a true championship contender. I don't know where you are from that
as a
perspective.
championship contender,
As a championship contender. Now, we know the Phillies, in my opinion, you should. If you're not, the Phillies are the closest team in Philadelphia to being a championship team. I don't even think it's that particularly that close. Number 2, I still think is the Eagles. But the Sixers, if Daryl Morey can build a roster and find some role players, and Paul George fits in, they could pass the Eagles pretty quickly. If you're the third best team in town, you're probably not the best team in the NFL. And then you see these dead period. All of a sudden, Mike, people seem to be waking up to some of the flaws nationally. NFL media didn't put them in their top 10 offenses. The one guy, you had ESPN talking about starters, 10th best starters. Are people, souring on this team in the dead period?
That's interesting because I did see the one. I don't remember what publication had them as the 10th, but mostly
ESPN. That was ESPN.
Okay. Well, mostly Pro Football Focus, 33rd team. I was more surprised. One of them had him as the number 2 roster in football. One of them had him as the number 3 roster in football, to which I kept wondering, are we undervaluing how good this team is? And saying, are we missing something about how good this team could be? And then, somebody else says, well, they're the 10th. Obviously, they're somewhere in that top 10, and people value the talent that they have. Now, as a true championship contender, I think that's the thing in almost all sports now. The dynasty is kind of like, well, we say that, and of course the Chiefs have won 2 in a row. But the parity in all sports lends to have multiple legitimate title contenders. And when you have multiple, to meaning so many of them, you almost undervalue them because there's so many. How many teams can win a Super Bowl? I don't know. Probably, I don't know. How many teams do you think off the top of your head? 10? Would you say, yeah, I think they can win the Super Bowl?
I would not go. I mean, again,
I think everybody thinks the Chiefs and the Niners are a little bit above. But if I said Green Bay won the Super Bowl, Detroit won the Super Bowl, Cincinnati won the Super Bowl, Baltimore won the Super Bowl, Houston won the Super Bowl. Did I say Green Bay? Dallas won the Super Bowl. I know everybody doesn't want to hear that.
Probably about 10. You're right. You could probably come up with 5.
So if I said
I think if you're doing the exercise,
the Jets, by the way, if I said the Jets won the Super Bowl, if I said any of those teams won the Super Bowl, would you be shocked?
Well, I would be shocked from the perspective of it's kind of how you frame it. Like something's got to really go wrong with Kansas City injury-wise, probably the quarterback getting hurt.
Yeah, but there was a time last year where we didn't think Kansas City was going to win it, and then they turned it on. But they were 11-6. They had some problems. Their offense wasn't what we had thought. Now they improve on offense. We think so, but they don't exist in a vacuum.
Well, I think there's a certain group of teams. San Francisco. I threw Detroit. I don't think you mentioned Detroit.
No, Detroit I threw in there.
In the NFC, I would say San Francisco, Detroit, or even vice versa. I think Detroit's the best team in the NFC. In the AFC, I look at Baltimore as very talented, although they've taken a step back, but still, if everything clicked for them, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they won a Super Bowl. So there's levels to it. I'd probably be at 5 for being legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And again, in football, everything is involved around attrition, more so than the other sports. You see big injuries. I mean, Joel always gets hurt, kills the Sixers every year. Jalen Brunson gets hurt at the worst time. Blah, blah, blah. Pacers are going to win anyway. But, there's attrition in other sports, but not like the NFL. So that's where, if you want to go the attrition route, you can say, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Green Bay won the Super Bowl if everything, if every star aligned. Would it surprise me now in the offseason where everybody's healthy and it's imaginary? Yeah, it would surprise me. So it's kind of how I guess you define it from that perspective. Whereas I look at the Phillies, that's a legitimate contender.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing in baseball is I think it's almost this year, oddly, it's almost the opposite where the National League has so few teams that are any good. It's really Philadelphia, the Dodgers. If you want to throw the Braves in, I think you just put them in there because they've been there, but they're just kind of average this year. The Brewers have been pretty good, but do you really believe in them? Probably not. Now, we've seen in baseball, the 85-win team gets hot at the right time, and they can advance. That doesn't happen as much in football. We've seen a few 9-7 teams kind of squeak their way through. Pittsburgh, the Giants. Baseball, it happens a lot more, where the best team gets knocked off in a series. Arizona did it last year. Phillies fans remember 2011 when an 85-win Cardinals team clipped you. So even though it doesn't seem like those teams can win, nobody thought Arizona could beat you. And then they're down 2-0, and then they have to beat you twice in your own building, and they did all of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I'm not saying the Phillies are guaranteed. I say if you look at the Ryan Howard, Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley Phillies, the worst of three teams won the World Series. The worst. And the other two lost.
The Phillies right now would be your Kansas City and your San Francisco.
Yes,
and
exactly.
If they
That's
lost,
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and if they lost, you would say somebody that you didn't anticipate as much. Like if the Braves beat the Phillies in the playoffs, you're not going to be shocked.
No.
If the Dodgers beat the Phillies in the playoffs, you're not going to be shocked.
No.
And then in the American League side, I mean, Baltimore is really good. The Yankees pitching is a disaster.
Well, that's why you described it. That's why we got you, Mike. You described it well. The Phillies are the Kansas City of baseball right now. The Eagles are not the Kansas City of football because Kansas City is the Kansas City of football. They're probably not even the Lions. They're probably not even the 49ers at this stage. Not to say everything can't go right and things click, but I do find it interesting that it took the dead period for people around the league nationally to come off this,
which is funny because I feel like as we do what you guys have a 2 hours every day. We do a segment called Football at 4. So every day at 4:00, we're talking football. So we are trying to uncover things to discuss in that segment. And I thought the Darius Slay audio on the Greenlight podcast with Chris Long brought out a lot of conversation. One of them, which was he comes out of right field and says Nolan Smith is going to be special. And I'm like, and my assertion on that was, why are the Phillies so good right now? You have two guys in that pitching staff that have emerged that are having a year that you did not see coming. I mean, Ranger Suarez has been good. He's Cy Young good right now. Yeah. Christopher Sanchez was a nice story. He's been all-star good. So to get to where the Phillies are, 9 games up, best team in baseball, you have to have stories that you never saw coming. If Nolan Smith becomes a special player, as Darius Slay suggests, that's a player that I don't think people watching this show right now are all that anticipatory for. He did nothing last year. Say that?
Yeah, most fans are down on.
You're
Nolan
right, Mike.
Smith.
That's a good point, though. You're right. And there's a
couple
other stories. Yeah.
Right. Darius Slay says, one guy that I think is going to be special and surprise everybody, Nolan Smith. And he kind of indicated, hey, Hassan Reddick blocked him last year. That's why he couldn't get as much playing time, but he's the guy that's going to. And I'm thinking, man, at this point of the season, 2 weeks ago or before I heard this, I'm like, I don't have any anticipation for what they're going to do with Nolan Smith. Maybe he's a rotational player. Maybe he's one of those guys that gets 4.5 sacks. And then the next year you're like, oh, he got 4.5 last year. Can he get to 8? Now I'm thinking, man, if he can come out of right field and really be a piece for this defense, how much does that change what their defense can be? So, there's always these stories that start to emerge. And I know as the Jets report in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're coming around it. I mean, when we come off 4th of July and everybody enjoy their
We're
holiday,
rounding
but
the edge like a Bryce
Yeah.
Huff sack right
like a
here.
Bryce Huff.
Yeah,
And
we
that's
really
part of
are.
the problem. By the way, with Slay, Slay's a very optimistic guy, great teammate. He's always going to talk people up.
I brought that up too, and I agree with you. But I said there's a lot of guys he could have picked. Oh man, you know who's going to surprise? That Cooper DeJean, because he did go on about Cooper DeJean and his athleticism and how unbelievable he is to see in person and all that stuff. He could have said Quinyon. I thought it was pretty random for him to pick out Nolan Smith out of clear blue sky.
It is, and hopefully, but part of the problem is what you just said. He's blocked. I mean, I'm high, with all due respect to Slay, who I love. I'm high on Bryce Huff. I think Bryce Huff is going to be a big deal. I really do. I think the Eagles got him right. And if you think about it, Mike, you can't have Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith on the field at the same time. I mean, we're getting to the point. So you talk about being blocked by Hassan Reddick. It was a similar instance. You know, are you going to take Josh Sweat off the field, the only legitimate defensive end you got, and have these two widely undersized guys trying to hold the edge? I mean, I get it. People don't run the football anymore. In theory, we're going to positionless football like the NBA. People keep talking about it, but I don't know. I don't think they'd feel comfortable having the 6-foot Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith on the other side. I don't know. I can't picture that. So I think he's going to be blocked again, because I think Bryce Huff is going to be really stinking good. And I mean really good.
Better than Reddick was?
Better than Reddick was last year. It's tough. 2022, that's one of the great defensive seasons in Eagles history. Hassan Reddick. Is he going to be that good? No. Is he going to be better than Reddick last year? I think so. He had 10 sacks, Mike, in 480 snaps. Bryce Huff. Now, very good team, very good defense, not team. Everybody knows but their defense is really talented, really good. He also got to be a one-trick pony. You know, he didn't have to worry about anything else except going after the quarterback. So there's a lot of context to that. But 2 years in a row, I think people don't realize this. 2 years in a row, Bryce Huff has led the NFL in pressure percentage. Not Myles Garrett, not Nick Bosa, not Max Crosby, not Micah Parsons. Bryce Huff.
Yeah.
2 years in a row. Now, granted, again, limited. I'm really high on that kid.
Mike,
Really
we did an
high.
exercise yesterday. I set the over-under for Bryce Huff at 14.5 sacks, and Johnny Mack took the over.
I got him at 15. Now, again, I'm not a sack guy, so I don't really care. But
I mean, almost anyone in the league, if you throw 14.5 at
It's hard to take the
under.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you're smart, you're taking the under. If you're smart,
it's just a hard number to get to. I would love to see it. Man, 14.5 for Bryce Huff. Whew. I'll tell you what, though. One thing that ties in with sacks is the coverage. And the other thing that Slay really went in on was the lack of communication from the safeties last year and how big of a problem that was.
Yeah.
And he really went in on the fact that having Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and the synergy they had the year before should be a big help in the secondary, because number one, he said Chauncey Gardner-Johnson never shuts up. He's like, I don't know how he does it. He just keeps talking the whole time. Whereas last year, he said there was almost no communication with the safeties, and that posed a big problem in the communication in the coverage schemes for them. So that could be something that really tightens up two things, the coverage, and adds to a guy like Bryce Huff's ability, because if you have more coverage, you have more time to get to the quarterback, and sometimes vice versa. Sometimes the coverage benefits from the pressure that comes and creates turnovers, which was why they were so good the year before.
And I only bring that up because you're right. That's a big number. I'm not telling people to go out and bet their life savings.
Is that the actual number? Is there a number?
No. We were just doing an exercise and we were just talking about it.
I'm just really high on the player. I think he's a really good player. I think the Eagles got it right. That's their Eaglesy move of the offseason. They're getting younger. They're getting cheaper. They get a longer shelf life. I think they got this one right as opposed to one they got wrong. We'll talk about him in a second. But when you talk about Slay picking out one person, if you ask me the same question and I'm picking out one person, I'm going Bryce Huff. So that makes it more difficult for Nolan Smith to break through because there's a little bit of redundancy similar to there was with Reddick and Nolan Smith. And I think where I'm right and Slay's wrong, with all due respect to Slay, they're paying the one guy $51 million. So they're not paying him to sit on the bench. That's part of it as well. Even if Nolan Smith shows up and plays better than Bryce Huff, which is, again, I don't think is going to happen. But even if he did, they're going to defer to Bryce Huff.
Okay, let me throw another topic into this mix based on the converse. I don't listen to Long's podcast. This is my producer, by the way, who brought this audio to me. But the Devin White stuff I thought was intriguing, which he didn't really talk about as much. But then some listeners were texting in, and it kind of like spawned another conversation. Would Vic Fangio use White? He had 9 sacks the one year with Carter and Davis. Could he do a lot of middle interior blitzes with Devin White? Could you see him used in that role here?
No. I mean, Vic's not a blitzing guy. That's not what he wants.
That was what my answer was. But you have this unbelievable athlete who has.
I know. I've heard it all. But here's the thing.
So do you say, listen, I don't like the blitz, but I got this guy that I can do something with?
Well, and understand, in that instance, if Vic felt that way, it wouldn't be a blitz. It would be a zone blitz, which is not a real blitz. In other words, you're still rushing 4, but you're rushing somebody and dropping
somebody a different area, right?
And this is what drives me crazy about certain fans, not everybody, but very similar to running backs playing in the slot. Why, as good as you are as a running back, as a receiver, and I'm not going to mention names, you can put in any name you want. Why would you put a player at a position he does not play, and there's no way he could be as good, even of a third receiver, whether it's Paris Campbell or John Ross, for extensive snaps? It doesn't make sense. As good as Devin White is as a pass rusher, as a linebacker, which is a little bit overrated, but he's athletic and he can go straight ahead. Is he a better pass rusher than Bryce Huff or Josh Sweat or Nolan Smith or Brandon Graham or any of those edge players? Jalix Hunt, throw him in the mix. Any of those edge players that would be dropping in coverage because you have to get Devin White on the pass rush? That's a good curveball, Mike. But you're throwing your fastball 75% of the time.
And right, exactly.
More.
You're not utilizing this heavy-handedly, but every here and there on a big third down, you might disguise something.
Curveball.
It's a potential weapon at that spot that they haven't really had. Is a really athletic guy who can.
It can be a situational weapon. It can be a situational weapon. But for those who just use Devin White. No.
Devin White, to me, Mike, is kind of reminds me of, or he's somebody that could fit the role of how you talked about the Philly stories, where there's unexpected people who step up. I'm not saying Devin's going to be that guy. I'm just saying he could be a dark horse candidate for, if you get a great Devin White, I'm not saying you're gonna, but if you do, and then you have competent linebacker playing Philadelphia, how much does that change the complexion of the whole defense?
And we saw it because you had TJ Edwards, who turned out to be a great player. And you were, hey, this guy's a nice story. He's undrafted. He was a good linebacker at Wisconsin. Didn't run well at the combine, but he maybe was the best linebacker in the country. Just didn't run well. And then he turns out to be a gem for you to the point that he gets himself paid and he's turned into a top 10 linebacker in the league. But because he far exceeded what you were thinking you were getting from that position, he helped get you to a Super Bowl because he was at a position that they don't value. He far exceeded the value that they put on that position, and it helped your defense become a Super Bowl defense. Now, you look at what they have now. I don't know, Nakobe Dean. I was really high on Nakobe Dean. I don't know what to think about him now. I mean, he can't stay on the field. But you're hopeful that the kid can play. I think they're hopeful that the kid can play. And then Devin White, who, man, the year they won the Super Bowl, he was the best player in the field at times. What happened to that guy? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
What happened to that guy? So, yeah, if you can get these two wild cards to be something that you're not really like, I have no anticipation for either one of those two guys. Devin White, I've heard from people who've played against him that I've talked to, man, he could play. He's this. But players like other players, so sometimes you got to take that with a grain of salt. And people who have covered him, he's uncoachable, he's out of position, he over pursues, they didn't want him back. So somewhere in the middle, he might fall. What does that mean? I don't know. And Nakobe Dean, I mean, my gosh, he's the first-round pick. How does nobody take this guy? Now he's in the third round. Now he can't stay on the field. What the heck is he in year number 3? Completely unknown wild card.
Yeah, I still think Nakobe's got to step up if the Eagles are going to have competent linebacker play this
Who
season.
has more of a role this year, Dean or Bond?
Dean, I hope. I think if it's the latter, it's a bad sign for the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's part of it. Again, not that contracts are the be-all, end-all, but they do tell you a lot, Mike. And for all the talk of Devin White getting $7 million, he didn't get a $7 million, whatever it was. I forget, it was 7.5, whatever they said, to save face. No, he didn't. He made $2.5 million. He's getting $2.5 million guaranteed with a bunch of incentives. Zach Bond, they spun it. His agent spun it as $3.5 million. No, he got the veteran minimum. I mean, the one thing you can criticize Howie Roseman on, from my perspective, and I say this constantly, he's taken it too far at linebacker. I mean, this is ridiculous. The assets they're pouring into the linebacker position. They're not pouring anything into the linebacker position. And that's a concern. And that's one of the concerns I think some of the national people are catching up on. Saying,
I mean, they did pour a third rounder into it, but he hasn't turned out. So it doesn't look good. But a third rounder is something.
No, yeah. And that's why I said Nakobe Dean. To me, it's still, everybody's talking about Devin White, Zach Bond. To me, it's still Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean's got to be the guy.
Is there a Van Ginkel on this roster?
That would be Zach Bond. But
the guy who Fangio says this guy fits. I have a role for him. I mean, I don't think anybody thought Van Ginkel was going to be a player that anybody gave two rats' asses about, and he turns out to be, a godsend for them.
Yeah, I'm surprised the Eagles didn't go after him. Now, he had a Lisfranc injury, so maybe that was part of it. That's, why his season ended last season. But he was phenomenal in Miami last year. I thought that was a player they'd go after. But they don't pay linebackers. But he's not a linebacker. He's more of an edge rusher. He's a very versatile player. He can drop into coverage, so he's that hook. He's that perfect hook or flat defender you're going to see. And I don't know if the Eagles have that player. We thought maybe it was going to be Zach Bond. Ironically, he was college teammates with Van Ginkel. But, Vic's got him playing off ball. Is he as versatile as Andrew Van Ginkel? I find that hard to believe, but, we'll see. From the defensive perspective.
It was a great reaction, by the way.
Yeah.
No anticipation for what Zach Vaughn's bringing to the table.
Well, Van Ginkel was really good last year. Really good.
Yeah, but Van Ginkel came out of nowhere.
That's true. And there's guys who develop, and he was a mid-round pick, and Zach was a mid-round pick, and he developed under Vic Fangio. So I see where you're going. I'm not saying it's not possible, but
I'm not suggesting there's that guy here. But coaches are creatures of habit. You find a guy that's kind of like your pet, and you say, "That's my guy. That's going to be my next version of the guy I had here." And
again, coaches aren't under oath at these press conferences, but I kind of pushed Vic on Zach Vaughn. I said, and I was asking him about the position, not the player, the position, his hook defender. And I said, "You had a lot of success with that last year in Miami. Is that something, Zach can do, blah, blah, blah." And right now he's got him an off-ball linebacker. So I don't know. I didn't get the hint that he was thinking about it. And that to me means you're going to have Huff doing it. You're going to have Brandon doing it. That's what happened in minicamp. You're going to have Nolan Smith do it. Maybe that's Nolan's role. Athletically, he's the best player for it. Athletically, Nolan Smith. Maybe he can do it. He'd be the guy.
I'm interested to see. To bring it back like a Seinfeld episode, back to the beginning of this story. I'm interested to see how they utilize Nolan Smith. If there's a different role or a bigger role for him.
Call back to Nolan. Yeah, maybe that is it. Maybe that's the path to a bigger role. Mike Gill. Did Mike Gill have any time for Hard Knocks last night?
What's funny? I did not. I don't have Max. Now in front of me is my television, and I have YouTube up, and I'm looking to see if anybody put it up on YouTube. And I see
the clips are out there. But
the clips I've seen some of the clips, and I think they're. I mean, the clip between
John
Mara and Mara talking about Saquon.
That's tremendous.
Not going to. I can't believe this is unbelievable that you got this access. Now you wonder if, even if it was staged, like for them to give you that information is. This is the one, like the Hard Knocks series has kind of grown old on me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I told Jody they should cancel it, and now they have 3. Now they have a free agency version, a training camp version, and an in-season version.
Yeah, this one I'm interested in. I definitely like to see, the conversations on draft day, in the draft room, free agency, those phone. I love the clip I saw yesterday where the 3 guys being shown, and who was the other guy? I can't remember.
Yeah, I forget his name too.
And they're talking, and the guy, the voice
Dan
guy
Morgan.
comes.
Dan Morgan.
Dan Morgan, right? Carolina, and the voice guy comes in, and he's like, "Did he just say that he'd be willing to give up Brian Burns for a 2nd-round pick?" And it's like this whole thing of like they're casually on the sidelines, and it's like this is where the basis of that trade started, with these 3 guys just standing there fine. And it's like you're out with your buddy at the bar talking about a fantasy football trade. Like, hey, I need a wide receiver this week. I got 2 guys on a bye. Well, I got 4. Take a look at my roster.
Well, now, did you see the John Mara clip where they were talking about Saquon? Because that, to me,
I saw the clip of him saying, like, we're not going to franchise him. We don't want to act like we disrespected him. You're talking about that one, right?
That one, yeah.
Yeah.
I felt it was like Shane trying to explain himself to a child. That's how I took that. I'm like, dude, to me, that would be so incredibly frustrating. And it must be incredibly frustrating for GMs to go, this doesn't make sense for us, dude. And by the way, that's not an insult, because for the Eagles are in a different position. I said, for the Giants, Saquon Barkley makes 0 sense. 0 cents. For the Eagles, as the potential last piece of the puzzle, you could make an argument that's when you.
And the other clip that I saw was how much they are invested into Daniel Jones.
Well, they have to be.
Well, and that's where this whole show is like, are they just saying this because they know they're on camera? He's like, listen, it's not his fault. You could put Patrick Mahomes behind that offensive line, and he's going to get killed. We have to protect this guy. and he was basically saying, like, we think we have the right guy. We just haven't given him anything.
Yeah. And that gives you input into why Howie's so good. I mean, Howie's pretty disciplined.
What are the percentage chances that Howie Roseman lets them do an Eagles Hard Knocks offseason?
I would say 0. I would like them to do it, though.
Right?
Well, they did the Amazon show. At some point, the NFL forces you into these things.
Yeah, well, guess what? He has 32 years to try to hold them off before he could get to the end. And I don't know that he'll be here in 32 years, but I don't think you're seeing him do it anytime soon.
He might be. He might be here in 32 years.
Jeez.
No, I think you're safe to say.
What is the shelf life on Roseman? How many more years?
I think.
I mean, he's only what? How old is he? 50?
49. He just turned 49.
Yeah, I think he's got at least 10 years, and I don't think they're getting rid of him here in Philly.
I mean, I think the only chance for a potential move is when Jeffrey steps down and Julian takes over. Then it becomes, all right, who's close to Julian? You know, it might be different. It would have to take Jeffrey Lurie not being involved.
Yeah, but I think even if Julian took over, he's going to be like, I need a guy that knows what the hell
it's
they're
possible.
doing.
But
Yeah.
I'm saying it's possible, but I'm saying anytime you have a new people, you know, they might want to put their imprint and they might want to go in a different direction. It opens a door is what I'm saying.
How many more years is Jeffrey around?
Well, Jeffrey's 72, I believe. So, you know, at some time, unfortunately, as we see,
though.
you know,
he might. I mean, it's
in
not
politics.
That
At some point, Father Time takes over.
but it's not that taxing for him. I mean, he could be there. He could, it doesn't do much. Wait, I'm going to go Seinfeld on us again and bring it back. I'm going to hit this super chat. I want to do it while we have Mike here. You talked about guys or teams that could compete for a Super Bowl. Our buddy Prince joins the chat. Thank you, Prince, for the super. We appreciate you, brother. He says, do the Detroit Lions have a better team than us? Offensively, I give the Eagles the edge. The defense is washed. How are they ranked so high? Johnny Mac, I know where you are on this. Mike Gill, what do you think about the Eagles versus the Lions comparison?
It's a good one. I think everybody would say, well, both have very good offensive lines. Detroit's offensive line and Philadelphia's offensive line. I would say last year maybe you went Philly. Now you lose Kelsey, you need a new right guard. You might go Detroit.
Yep,
their offensive line is very good. I'm a big Amon-Ra St. Brown fan. I think the Eagles, too, is probably – I mean, Jameson's kind of a wild card. He didn't – he missed a lot of time.
Yeah, he's healthy. Yeah, but Devontae's definitely more proven.
Yeah.
Sam Laporte is a hell of a tight end, by the way, for people who haven't noticed. Their running game is much more concrete, and they have the great complement. You got the chain mover, David Montgomery. You got Jahmyr Gibbs, who is just, they have
a lot of weapons on that offense. Their offenses are comparable. You might say because they have the same play caller coming back, there might be more continuity with their offense going into the second year.
Yeah, different types because you have a traditional passer versus what the Eagles do.
Right, but the fact that the offensive coordinator didn't take a head coach, what's his name again?
Ben
Johnson.
Ben Johnson, because he wanted $15 million.
Right, but
what an ego on that guy.
Yeah, but the fact that he's back in the same role, I think that gives them maybe if you're saying there's comparable, you might give the slight edge to them because they're playing in the same offensive system and that they had last year. The Eagles are kind of learning a new one on the fly here. Defensively, I would think you have to. Well, their secondary is a little bit of a problem. They drafted a lot back there. They lost Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, although he didn't play a whole heck of a lot last year. Yeah. He was hurt. Man, those two teams are pretty comparable. But the fact that their coaching staff is now that's not to say you don't like the Eagles changing their coaching staff, but the fact that their staff is intact again, you might give them the slight edge.
Yeah, I mean, I have Detroit as the best team in the NFC coming into training camp. They should have beat San Francisco last year. We know, part of the reason, they're very aggressive. Obviously, they lost because they were so aggressive. Generally, that was successful for them. Dan Campbell's not begging off that. That creates tremendous pressure on the opposition. Bit them in the ass, but overall, I like that approach. Their defensive front is really good for people that don't know. And it's getting better because they brought in DJ Reader. Lim McNeil, remember the fight in the Eagles draft room with Tom Donahoe?
For Milton Williams.
That was about Lim McNeil and Milton Williams. I love Milton. Lim's been better. So Tom Donahoe's probably spiking the football somewhere. Aiden Hutchinson's phenomenal. I don't like the Eagles, the Lions linebackers, but at least they have potential. You know, Jack Campbell's there. He wasn't great as a rookie.
Well, I don't know. Is it fair to say that Devin White doesn't have enormous potential? You might not believe in it.
At what point, Mike, you have Jack Campbell, who's 1 year in, versus Devin White, who's 5 years in, has started 79 NFL games, somewhere in that range.
Look, I think we could both. I know we could say I don't have a lot of anticipation for White, but he certainly had an all-pro level season on a team that won the Super Bowl, for God's sakes.
Well, it's one of the great anomalies in sports. I say it all the time. I talk about his Super Bowl run all the time. It was crazy because he wasn't good. And all of a sudden, he played like the best linebacker in football. As you mentioned, I'll go even farther. He was the best player on Tampa Bay's run to the Super Bowl. That's how good he was. That's how good he was. But I will say this, Mike. He had an all-pro season because he had 9.5 sacks, and that's what people vote on. And I brought this up yesterday.
Number jumps out, but he also, I mean, he made a ton of tackles. He's been a tackler. One of the problems that this defense had last year was their linebackers were slow. They were constantly.
Well, he's definitely the most athletic linebacker the Eagles have had in a very long time. But I brought this up yesterday on the show. You may say what you want about PFF, but generally when they say a player's playing well, they're playing well. And when they say a player's playing poorly, they're playing poorly. Here are the 5-year grades of Devin White. He was 68th out of 90 as a rookie. Second year was his best year in the NFL, and he was 62 of 83. In 2021 was his worst year. He was 79 of 86, though, because there were some horrible linebackers. In 2022, 74 of 81. Last year, 82 linebackers graded, 80th, and he was benched. He has never played consistent football throughout his NFL career.
And by the way, this guy was the 5th pick in the draft?
Which is crazy for a linebacker.
5th overall pick.
Yeah.
He has never played consistent football. And that's 5 years. That's not a small sample size. 5 years of starting. That's not a small sample size. That's where I say Jack Campbell, all right, the sample size is still not there. That's why I have more confidence here in Nakobe Dean, because Nakobe, to me, there's still, he's got to play. He's got it, and we'll see. You have this massive sample size with Devin White. I just don't see it turning around. Crazier things have happened. You might see a 1-game, 2-game spurt, but the consistency, I don't think it's going to be there. And then back to the lines, at Mike Gill's show. Make sure you listen to Mike. People are going down the shore, so hopefully you spike. People are going to listen on their way down as they enjoy the holiday. But that secondary is getting better. You mentioned Brian Branch was a great rookie, and they drafted Terrion Arnold. So that's going to be a great comparison.
Yeah.
Because the Eagles made that decision, Quinyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold, and they went the way. Those players are going to be compared and on two good teams. And, hopefully they both work out. But Terrion Arnold's a good player. Kirby Joseph is a dirty player, but he's a good player. Melifonwu was the reason Chauncey couldn't get back on the field. They drafted Enos Rackestraw, however you pronounce his name. That's a guy a lot of people speculated might be in Philadelphia. They got talent all over the place in Detroit, all over the place. Very good team.
Very good team.
Yeah.
Mike Gill, thanks for joining the show, man. If you guys are going down the shore, the best sports program in all of South Jersey is Mike Gill's on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you guys tune in to Mike Gill on 97.3 down there. Mike, thanks for joining the show, man. We appreciate it.
All right, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike Gill joining us on Birds 365. Good stuff there. Good response to our super chatter. Shout out to James Carver. Drops another 50 memberships to everybody. We have got to send James to the game in Dallas, Johnny Mac. I think James is down in Dallas. JAKIB is going to get the tickets, all paid for, all encompassing. A meal
HC&C Stadium, one of the best stadiums in the NFL.
I was there actually right when it opened. I was there when I was a freshman at University of Alabama, Johnny Mac, and it was the very first college football game. You know who was trotted out as the starter, and it was not supposed to be?
I don't know. How Jalen Hurts?
Jalen Hurts, baby.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be Blake Barnett, and I forget the other.
Blake Barnett.
Blake Barnett was supposed to be your starter. Jalen Hurts comes out, beats USC 52-6, and I watched that at AT&T Stadium. Great game, great atmosphere. Jerry did build a good stadium. Got to give him credit.
I got some. I always get these. Not that they mean anything, but we were doing, some stat projections yesterday. I happened to get over-unders for Jalen Hurts. They were not good. It's like, what's going on?
The national media is not as high on our quarterback as we are here in Philadelphia. They are not. Not. That's what it seems to be.
And we'll hit break. Maybe I'll forward you the email during the break. Not good. I'm like, what am I missing here? Easy way to make money, I think, but I'm not a gambler, so
I'm not a gambler either.
I don't want to send people in that direction.
All right, let's get to our commercial break. We'll have BLG coming up in 10 minutes. Again, thank you, James Carver, man. It really goes a long way how much you support our channel, so we appreciate that very much. We are going to do something very nice for James, even if he won't take me up on the tickets. I know he is having some surgery or whatever he has, but I'm going to talk to James, and we're going to work something out. We're connected over on Twitter, so I will talk to James. We are going to hook him up with a JAKIB care package of some sorts. Hopefully send him to a game down in Dallas. Thank you, brother. We appreciate you. I appreciate it. And I think all the people in the chat appreciate it as well. They're now members. So you got the green names, everybody. So good stuff from James Carver. Good stuff from Mike Gill. I thought he was great today. Gave a good response to our buddy Prince, who asked a good super chat. So let's get to a commercial break, and then we'll touch on what Johnny Mac just talked about with the over-unders coming up next on Birds 365. Stay tuned, everybody, and drop a like.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust, and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday, July 3rd edition of Birds 365. Right around the corner from the Eagles returning to training camp. Dog days of summer are almost in the rearview mirror. Hope everybody is enjoying their summer, the warm weather and everything going on. We appreciate you being here all through the summer. All of our loyal listeners, you guys are really the best. I love each and every one of you. So thanks for being here. Johnny Mac, I'm going to hit these things. You emailed me them. Boy, you're right. Some of these numbers are interesting. The over-unders that Johnny Mac got and he sent me. I don't know. The one that really stands out to me is the rushing yards.
The rushing numbers are insane compared to
550.5 over-under for regular season rushing yards for Jalen Hurts. I'm going under on that.
You're going under?
550? How many rushing yards did he have last year?
6 over 600. The year to 2 years prior, it was well over 700. That's what I thought was. Are you kidding me?
So this you're going the opposite way.
Hit 784 was his number in 2021. 760 was his number in 2022. 605 was his number last year.
You're right. Yeah.
And he was hurt last year, clearly dealing with a knee injury. So from that perspective, and I wrote about this on Sports Illustrated, I mean, that number scared the crap out of me simply because for those of the people that think Vegas knows, or is that an indication that Kellen Moore is going to change this offense which scares the you-know-what out of me? And then the touchdowns as well. 10 in 2021, 13 in 2022, 15 last season. And they got him at 9.5. Like, what are we doing here, Zan? This tells me that they think they're going to hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley and take that out of their offense. Like, what are we doing?
I think the passing yards are interesting too. They got 3,550 the last 2 years. He eclipsed that number.
Over that last. Now the touchdowns are right there. He had 2022. He had 2022, right. 22 in 2022, and he had 23 last year, and they have it at 22.5. So that's hard to say. 22 in 2022, and he had 23. So he should have 24, right? He had 22 in 2022. He had 23 in 2023.
It's a 24 this year.
Yeah. The numbers are incredibly low.
I would take the over on the passing. I would take the over on the touchdowns because I think Kellen Moore is going to throw the ball and he's going to have a better passing offense than what they had last year. The rushing numbers, you're right. The data would point to him going over that. I wonder if there's a reduction in them because of, how Jalen Hurts is developing in his career. The interceptions is interesting. 11.5 on interceptions, regular season interceptions. I would go under. If you're over, then I think we're in danger zone of Hurts not having.
Well, he had 15. That's the biggest thing. He had 15 last year. Prior, he had 9 and 6. He had a total of 15 in 21 and 22. He had 15 last year. So it's got to be under 15. It should be under 11.5. But boy, if Jalen Hurts is under 550 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns rushing, one of two things have happened. He's hurt, obviously the most obvious one, or the Eagles are having a really bad season.
Yeah, which wouldn't be good, but the seemingly slam dunk is the rushing touchdowns. They have it at 9.5.
He's got 28 over the past 2 seasons.
I mean, he had 15 last year. He had 13 in 22, and he had 10 in 2021. His first year as a starter with only 15 games played. I mean, I'm taking over 9.5. I think they're gonna get 9 push touchdowns.
If you add the playoffs into it and the Super Bowl run,
which this doesn't.
18. So. No, he had 18 to 20. Yeah, it doesn't count the playoffs, but the what counts is the impact on the offense. I mean, I don't get people, man. Right? You're so successful at doing something, so stop doing it. Never makes sense to me. Never makes sense to me.
We talked about it earlier on the show. Attrition matters in the NFL a lot. I mean, I'm with you where it's like I'd rather get 5 years of Jalen Hurts playing his game than 10 years of him being something he's not. But maybe that's part of it. Maybe they are trying to run him less. Maybe he's trying to run less. I'm not sure. But wait, Johnny Mac, what do you think of the passing yards? They have it at 35.
Oh, that's low too.
That's really low.
Yeah, I mean he was at almost 39 last year. And that was supposedly a bad season. Yeah. And he was at 37. He was over 37 in 2022. I mean,
take away some of those Quez Dropkins drops, and he might be over $4,000 last year.
Yeah, yeah. Those numbers shocked me when I got them, because. I got all the quarterback numbers. I just sent you Jalen Hurts, and all the other ones make sense. And I looked at Jalen's, and I'm like, what the? I don't know. But I'm not a guy.
What's the explanation here? Is it that Philly is drinking the Kool-Aid too early?
No, the explanation is because that's not Kool-Aid. That's assuming Jalen goes in a negative direction.
Well, that's what I mean, is that they don't think he's as good as we think he is, and
it's an indication. It's an indication they think the offense is changing dramatically and will be leaning on Saquon Barkley. That's what
definitely because it's not like they lowered the rushing yards and then they bolstered the passing yards. The passing yards aren't good either, so it basically means they think that they're going to take the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands.
Exactly. And I go back to Joe Shane. We're not paying a quarterback $40 million. Well, you're not paying a quarterback $51 million to hand the ball off to a $13 million running back.
You think they're drawing comparisons to that? Remember that Dallas offense that was number 1 in the NFL with Kellen Moore? That was a big running game offense, wasn't it? With Ezekiel Elliott kind of in his prime at that time. I don't know what exactly the numbers are, but I'm wondering if they think Saquon's going to be used in that way, where there's a lot of run game going on here, and it's not all from the quarterback.
Well, and again, contextually, you want to run the ball. You want to be up late, and you want to run the ball to close games, and that will increase your rushing numbers. So, you want to, and that's the Eagles' philosophy, and that's not changing with Jeffrey Lurie. You want to pass the ball to get the lead. You want to run the ball to close the game out. And I'm very confident that that's not changing under Jeffrey Lurie. So that's why these numbers kind of open my eyes, and I'm like, I don't think these people know what they're talking about. I think it's an opportunity to make some money, and I'm not a gambling expert. I'm not telling anyone to gamble. I think it's an opportunity to make some money. I think they're easy numbers for Jalen Hurts to hit if he stays healthy.
Slam dunk for me would be that. I think the passing yards. I don't think I think he's throwing for more than 3,500 passing yards, especially with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. But we'll see. Let's get a commercial break. We have BLG, Brandon Lee Gouton, coming up next. I'm curious to hear what BLG says about some of these numbers. So we'll do that next with him on Birds 365. If you're in the chat, make sure you guys drop a like on the show. Let's get up over 100 during the live show. We're at 53. Let's get to 75 here before the break is over, guys. Drop a like if you're in the chat. BLG coming up next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in overdue, a July 3rd edition of Bird 365, joined now by Brandon Lee Gouton, BLG. What's going on, BLG?
Doing good, guys.
Good to see you, Brandon. And we'll kind of factor this in over at Bleeding Green Nation. You did your over-unders 25. I see you did it with Bo, our good buddies at PHLY. You were filling in there. And what we'll talk about your guys and your over-unders, which are a little bit more fun than the traditional over-unders. But I'm sure you got that email that I got yesterday about the quarterback over-unders in Vegas. I was stunned at the numbers for Jalen Hurts and the perspective of, boy, it looks like an opportunity to make easy money if you look at his recent history. Particularly, they had him at 550 rushing yards, over under 9.5 touchdowns, BLG. I mean, this is a guy who's he was near 800 back in 2021, well over 700. Last season, with the knee problem, he was still over 600. He had 15 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, 13 the year prior, 10 the year prior. What am I missing here? What are they thinking out in Vegas other than Kellen Moore's changing this offense?
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a dangerous game when it's like seems too good to be true, right? Against the sports books. What do they know that I don't know?
Exactly. That's what I was at. Like, what do I don't know here?
Yeah, that's suspicious. That is surprising. Looking at those numbers compared to his career numbers here that I just pulled up too. I mean, you would most people would be signing with the over on that. I expect Jalen Hurts to be more involved with his legs than he was last year, like you said, John, just because in part because I think he'll be, knock on wood for his sake, a bit healthier than he was last year. And he's still only 25. It's not like that's going away, that part of his game entirely. So yeah, that's surprising to me too.
Yeah. It's crazy. And then even the passing numbers, 3,500 yards, which he's been well north of over the past 2 seasons. The touchdowns were right in the 22.5 range, which is where he's been.
Yeah. And
the interceptions, 11.5, understandable because of the spike in interceptions last year. But even because I add the passing number into it, BLG, and I say, well, the passing's coming down as well. And if the passing and the rushing comes down, the only way I can get there is if they're a run-heavy team with Saquon Barkley. Is that what Vegas is thinking the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be? And if they are, I don't like that.
I think that's only the way that looks as if, they're really good again, like they were in 2022, where they're salting away big leads late in the game. And then obviously their run, pass run ratio is a little bit more favor of the run in that case because, game script and whatnot and things going favorably for them. But I mean, the passing numbers, like you said, mostly sound about right. I expect the interceptions to come down from 15, which they were last year after, the previous seasons, he was at 6, 9, and 4, and then as a rookie. So yeah. And I think, look, for all the questions about Jalen Hurts, I do think, when we talk about the red zone specifically, maybe those rushing numbers come down a little bit because he has more success as a passer. But that's the only thing I would see.
Yeah, the problem with that, BLG, is that they only have the passing numbers at 35-50 and 22 touchdowns. It's like you would think if the rushing numbers went down, he would start to throw the ball more, which really just to me seems like they're just trying to take the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands in this projection. But BLG, just an overall question, because the other thing Johnny Mac and I were talking about this week is the NFL left the Eagles off the top 10 offenses list. They had the Colts on there. Like, are we drinking the Kool-Aid in Philly too early on Jalen Hurts? It seems like the national media and people outside the city just aren't as sold on him. I can't think of another reason why they wouldn't be in the top 10 offenses of the NFL. Are we drinking the Kool-Aid too early on Jalen Hurts?
I can't agree with that ranking. And not to say that there isn't some level of skepticism to be warranted with the Eagles offense. And, look, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown have been incredibly healthy the past couple of years. Are you going to get that luck again? Right. Dallas Goedert, didn't have the year that people thought he would last year, and he's getting older. Hurts, obviously, we covered. There's question marks, offensive line. Sure, but relatively speaking, I still think so many teams would trade to have the Eagles skill players, especially on offense. And even though there are questions as well with the offensive coordinator and whatnot, I just think the floor for that group, because they're so talented, is high. And I think that ranking is it's tough for me to believe the Eagles don't have a top, fourth of the league offense. They should be probably, top 8.
And they were 8th last year. So, I mean, and people thought they stunk.
Yeah, the whole ranking was weird, though. The Eagles weren't on it. The Ravens weren't on it. The Cowboys weren't on it. All 3 of those teams were top 8 offenses in the league last year.
I want to clarify that we're talking about one guy.
It's true.
I mean, I always say about list season, BLG, if you don't like it, just go to the next one, and you'll find something you do like eventually. But I do think, some people, maybe in the national media, in this dead period, I called it a dead awakening. I don't know if it's because the Phillies are so good and the Sixers just got Paul George to add to the mix, and people are starting to realize, hey, the Eagles aren't the best team in town. I mean, that's the Phillies, and probably aren't the best team in the NFL. I think the national media may be catching up to that. Not to say they're not a good team if everything falls correctly, but there is some holes. There are some holes. I think it's more about that than the ceiling isn't there. I think the ceiling is there, but there's also the possibility that things can go wrong. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times for a really bad season, people don't expect that bad season to happen by any means, at least in Eagles history, in recent Eagles history.
Yeah.
In 2020, which is obviously, a strange year with COVID and everything. But, coming off of that 2019, Carson Wentz looks good at the end of that season run. No one's saying like, oh, the Eagles are going to be a disaster next year. And the coach who just won the Super Bowl a couple seasons ago is going to get fired. The only Super Bowl winning head coach in Eagles history. So, yeah, I mean, you always have to consider things can get bad in a big way much more quickly than you would ever expect. That has to be acknowledged that the downside there exists. But again, ultimately, when it comes to this team, especially the offense, I think the talent, I believe in the talent. And just, I feel like the talent is too good. It doesn't guarantee they're going to win the Super Bowl, but it does give you a feeling that they're going to be competitive. And they
have a high floor. They have a high
for optimism.
Floor.
Yes.
Yeah. I definitely think we're not going to have a disastrous season, so nobody has to concern themselves with that in Philadelphia. All right, let's go over to bleedinggreennation.com. BLG and our buddy Bo Wolf are going head to head with the over-unders. I want to start because, again, I get accused of being a Saquon hater all the time, BLG, all the time. And Zander happened to ask me this question earlier in the week. And I have Saquon Barkley over everybody. We asked multiple guests, what's Saquon going to do? And all these people think Saquon is the second coming. And I'm like, hey, temper, he's not as good as you think he is. But I got him at 1,300 rushing yards. I got him 350 receiving. That's a lot of scrimmage yards. You and Bo placed it at 1,263.5, and BLG went under. Give BLG the hate mail.
Yeah, I've got no shortage of that when it comes to Saquon. And to be clear, that number is what DeAndre Swift had last year from the yards of scrimmage. Yes. And DeAndre Swift had a Pro Bowl season. He was top 5 in rushing yards. Like that was a good season. And I just don't know how. Even if we're saying, Saquon's going to be good for this team, and again, I don't think he's going to be bad. Is he going to be? Can he outpace DeAndre Swift? Of course, he can do that. But I'm not ready to just assume that's definitely going to happen. Obviously, there's some injury concern baked into
based on health. I'm assuming health.
That's baked in there. I'm not. I think part of it too is that the rushing. I can buy the rushing production being there, especially if they're a good team, like we talked about, the game script going in their favor. Yeah. But I have questions still about him being truly this, big factor in the passing game. And I'm not really like buying into that part as much until I see it.
Yeah, that's funny though. Yeah. So BLG, you think rushing and passing for Saquon is going to be under 1,263?
I'm taking the under on it. I think that's the side I have to lean. I've been on
the record. How
would
you break it down though? Like how would you do 900 rushing and a couple hundred passing? Would it be 1,000 and 100? How would you break it down?
Yeah, so Swift was at 1,049 rushing yards, and then he was at 214 receiving yards. I think that part, I do think, again, Saquon has the potential to go higher. But we're talking about, as we do most times with Saquon, a quarterback who doesn't necessarily love throwing to the running backs. So I have questions about that. Again, I feel good about I think he's a good bet to get to 1,000, but I don't know how much further he's going beyond that. I would think they're going to ride him hard after giving him that big contract, but as we've seen, the Eagles still typically
like Kenny Gainwell too, by the way.
Drafted Will Shipley.
That in. Yeah.
So I'm just, there's a level of this for me where I need to see it before I fully believe it.
Yeah. BLG, I agree, but here's the thing, BLG. Sorry, Zander.
No, you're good.
Zander loves Saquon. Bill Colarulo, our buddy from 97.5, he's like, Saquon's this, Saquon's that. And then when you boil them down, they're like, yeah, he's not going to do that much. And I'm like, I'm with you. I'm like, Yeah, he's not going to be that big of a deal in the passing game. But I kind of look at Miles from 2 years ago and I say, well, you know, if you're what people say you are, even a motor, you're going to be above that if you're healthy. And I think Miles had 1269. And then I'm talking, 300 passing yards. That's not great. You got to be a little bit better than DeAndre Swift, and everybody's under it. I'm just amazed, and I'm the hater. So I'm bringing my personal business, which I shouldn't do. So I want to get it back on track with BLG. Another one I find interesting that you guys did, and again, everybody check it out at bleedinggreennation.com, is the receivers and the combined percentage of the Eagles' total receiving yards. And you guys put it at 60.9, all AJ, all Devontae, all the time. You went over, Bo went under. Why'd you go over?
I just think that, I mean, they're just by far and away the Eagles' best receivers. And, we're including the entire passing offense, but still,
Dallas, yeah.
I think those guys are so dominant. They're in their prime. Knock on wood. Again, they've been healthy. They should be able to stay healthy based on, there's no really big track record of injury with those guys. And Jalen Hurts loves throwing to them, as we've seen in practice. He loves targeting those guys.
Is it a good thing though?
Yeah, I don't want to be like, maybe Alshon Jeffrey, or at least what was believed to be Alshon Jeffrey, and say too much Zach Ertz or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do think there is, and it's hard to say like it's a bad thing when you throw to your very best players all the time. But I do think there are some opportunities where Hurts can probably mix in an occasional target to someone else, in part just because to keep the defense honest. There were times last year when some of those guys were just wide open and he wouldn't even throw their way. And, maybe it's good to just take the free yards at some points. But overall, I think they are, Devontae and AJ are the engine of the offense, of the passing game. And I expect that to continue.
BLG, I want to talk Nolan Smith with you. You guys had the over-under at 3.5. You went over. Bo went under. I'm taking under, but the context I want to add is, and me and John have been talking about Nolan a lot this week. It's interesting. He was taken in the same draft in the first round with Jalen Carter, right? Both of them are taken at positions of need in a way. And this last year, the Eagles lose Hassan Reddick and they lose Fletcher Cox. The Eagles did not go out and sign a big name to replace Fletcher Cox because Jalen Carter is taking that role. They lose Hassan Reddick and they feel the need to replace him with Bryce Huff. Does that say a lot about how they feel about Nolan Smith? I know it's not an apples to apples comparison, but ideally your first round edge rusher would replace the guy that's the most productive on the edge. Doesn't look like he's done that. What's your expectation for Nolan this year?
Yeah, in a perfect world, I think, he would be the Hassan Reddick successor 1-for-1, but not enough to go off of based on the rookie year, which I think it's, fair to wonder that if he couldn't get on the field more, is that a bad signal for him? I would say, yeah, there's some truth to that. I would also say this coaching staff, one of their weaknesses has been playing the young players. We saw Keely Ringo didn't really get a chance to play until late in the year, and then he showed some promise once he actually got the chance to play. So I would like to see Nolan Smith get the chance to play, and really in a sink or swim kind of thing with him. I mean, like, it has to be, you have to see what you have in him. I know that the coaches are trying to win, but this was a first round pick. He showed some flashes of potential. He had 1.5 sacks, including the playoff game last year. They are hurting for pass rush rotation last year. Like, just play him. You have to find playing time for him. You have to see what he can do. He's a young guy who I think can add some juice to this team in the pass rush department in that rotation. So I think I believe in him because I liked him coming out. I think he has the mentality to succeed in the NFL, and I think he just needs to be given the opportunity.
Where do you think he falls, BLJ? You had over 3.5.
Yeah, I'm going to say 5 or so. I think he's part of the rotation. It's hard to project he's going to go to double digits or something.
Yeah,
I think that's a massive leap, but I think he can be around 5.
My two favorite categories probably you guys did. One was your best bet, and that was the percentage of defensive snaps played by Jalen Carter which was 58%. You both went over. I'm going over. If it's under, that's a bad sign for the Philadelphia Eagles, BLG, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's either an injury or, a very oversimplified way of thinking about it to me is that Jalen Carter is like maybe the best player on the team. Certainly, I think the best player on defense. Like, play him. I know, I'm not saying play him 100% of the snaps. You don't want to wear him out, but I mean,
and by the way, Bick has kind of said that. He's like, we're going to play. He said him and Jordan, we want to play him.
This is why I made this my best bet, which is like for Bo and me. We decided to be an extra point for whoever decides that on one of them. And I just think they set the table for this. The Eagles, between Vic Fangio, Jalen Carter himself said, not that he wasn't working on his technique at all, but he was like more so working on his conditioning even than anything else about his game. So I think that's just a lock to happen, basically.
Yeah. And right guard, Tyler Steen versus the Fields. That's a good one. That is a really good one. The Eagles want it to be Tyler Steen. I'm going to go the Field. What way did you go?
I'm going to go with Tyler Steen. I do wonder, if he is the right fit at right guard. I think it's possible. Him and Mekhi Becton could end up having the most success switching roles in a way where Becton could be the guard and maybe Tyler Steen would make a really good swing tackle. That just might be a better fit for him.
And by the way, I think he'd be a really good swing tackle.
I agree. Even though he might not have like the traditional frame for a tackle.
Yeah.
There might be some concerns in that regard, but ultimately, like you said, John, the Eagles want Tyler Steen to win this job. That doesn't mean he will definitely have it the whole year. Doesn't mean he can't fall out of favor, just like Isaac Samalo did in 2017.
Yeah.
But I do think he's going to get every chance to win it, and therefore I'm going to,
I always go back. Great minds think alike, BLG. I always go back to the Super Bowl season because it started out with Isaac, young player, wasn't what he turned into. Obviously, he's a very good player when he left. Got benched for Chance Warmack, and then they finally settled on Stephen Wisniewski. Who's your whiz this year? Is it Sharping or is it Hennessy? That's Sharping, and I bring that up because that Sharping signing that came out of nowhere for me in June. I'm like, what's going on here? What does that mean? What did Max Sharping, or did it mean anything to you? Because he started like 38 NFL games. I was like, what does this mean, Max Sharping being here?
Maybe nothing, but it's a little suspicious. It makes my antenna goes up and makes me think, do the Eagles love what they're seeing out of Tyler Steen and their guard situation, I guess, as a whole, in OTA's minicamp to be making that signing when they did? So I wonder, it could again, but I could also just be like, hey, we love offensive line depth. This is a guy with experience. We lost Sue Opeta. We lost Jack Driscoll. The Matt Hennessy and Max Sharping, in theory, could be your new version of those guys for this team. So I don't want to read too much into it. But it does make me wonder.
BLG, the 25th and final over-under was 1.5 in playoff wins. Each of you had the under. Why do you have the under in playoff wins over at 1.5?
I would take the over on half, to be clear. So I do think they're going to win a playoff game this year. And this is playoff game wins, just to be clear. Again, so not like we're not including a first round. They could get a first round bye and only win one game, and they wouldn't hit the over on this. And that would still be, like pretty good. Not, the season everyone wants to see.
Game. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It would not be like this disaster of a season by any means, just because I'm taking the under at 1.5. But I think first of all, there's a lot for this team to fix and to prove before they can. I think it's merely assumed they're going to go on this great playoff run again. I think they will be in the mix to do that. I think they will be competitive and have the chance. But I lean on the under, in part because it comes back to Nick Sirianni for me. I just think that in the playoffs, it's going to get more competitive. You're going to need your coach to give you an edge, and I kind of worry about that. Obviously Sirianni has done a great job in the past. The playoff games he did play in outside the Super Bowl were laughers. I kind of wonder about what it looks like more so in a close playoff game with him. And obviously the playoff games against the Buccaneers too. Both of them were also lappers for the most part. So I don't totally have full faith in him, giving the Eagles an edge, being aggressive, doing what he needs to do in a big spot.
At Brandon Gouton, make sure you follow BLG on X and Twitter. Read him at Bleeding Green Nation. Very fun exercise over there. Everybody should check it out. Since we'll end it with the head coach, we haven't talked about him. Nick Sirianni, apologies for sideline behavior.
That was the best one. Wait, for everybody too in the chat, you can play on the thing. You don't have to read. So you can put in your input. So it's a really fun thing to do on bleedinggreenNation.com.
So it's 0.5, and you and Bo both went over. Which I agree. Yeah, I mean, Nick's going to be Nick at some point. So, yeah, I think it's pretty comfortable. He's going to get to 1. Yeah, I mean, Nick, in a larger perspective, this is why I'm not high on the Eagles season. I just think it's a goofy setup what the Eagles have done here, and I can't get past it. It doesn't make sense on any angle. It's like, you know what, or get off the pot, Jeffrey. It's like if you want him back, let him be the head coach. Don't half-ass it. I don't like it, BLG.
I think that's fair. I don't think it's a 1-for-1, but the 2020 setup of too many cooks in the kitchen kind of comes to mind a little bit. Where the Eagles were forcing things. I think there's been a little bit too much blame. I know the coordinators from last year, I don't think they were the guys ultimately who had the answers, but to put the season and the collapse entirely on them, I just don't think is fair. Or if it is, it's very convenient to just be like, those guys are gone, so everything's fixed now. That's not the reality to me. Ultimately, again, I go back to, I believe in the talent. I think they're gonna. And also, I like the schedule for them. I think the schedule is very favorable for them in some ways, especially relative to last year, which was not. So I think they're going to take advantage of the schedule. I think they're going to take advantage of the talent edge that they have. You look at the fact that, there has not been a repeat winner in this division. It just feels like fate that they have a good chance to win it. But again, I start to wonder about the ceiling when it comes to Sirianni and some of the other concerns with this team.
I'm going to take the under on the sideline behavior.
That's bold.
Wow. And here's why. I think that you're going to see a different Nick Sirianni this year. I think he is going to be a more reserved coach. This is the first time since he's been hired that the hypothetical pie has been stuffed in his face after last year. I know he started 2-5, but the whole team rallied around the planting of the roots and the planting of the seeds and all those different things. And in a way, he found his rhythm and he was comfortable being that extroverted, goofy Nick Sirianni. Well, it all came crashing down last year, and he was in a do this or else type of situation. I think Nick Sirianni is going to be much more reserved on the sidelines this year. Maybe not, but I think we're going to get zero apologies for sideline behavior from Nick Sirianni this year.
I thought you were going the Dom route. Yeah, I thought you were going to go
No,
there.
I'm not. I'm not even going the big Dom route.
I'm surprised you guys didn't go the big Dom route. Any dust ups, big Dom dust ups, maybe 0.5. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, big Dom's, keeping Darius Slay from going to Baltimore. Who knew? Who knew how impressive? And he tells me what each day of practice is. So that's how important Dom is. So,
right.
Yeah. Good to see you, BLG. Everybody read Bleeding Green Nation. He will not be here next week. Hopefully we get you back the week after. You going on vacation? Anywhere exciting?
Going to Vermont for the week.
Going to Vermont. All right. Enjoy it. You're not going to see the fall foliage, though.
What's in Vermont, BLG? You gotta entertain me. What's in Vermont? You going to a lake house or something?
Yeah, kind of getting out in nature and whatnot. Seeing some friends up there. Yeah.
Good stuff.
All right. Enjoy it.
BLG.
Yeah,
thanks, guys.
We'll see you, bud.
There's BLG joining us on Birds 365. Good stuff from BLG. Make sure you guys go and check out that site. Like I said, you can play along, so it's kind of fun, and it shows you how many people voted with you or against you. So definitely a fun exercise to do going into the Eagle season. Just 8 minutes left to play here on Birds 365. for the remainder of the week. We're going to have no shows tomorrow, no shows Friday. So I hope everybody enjoys their 4th of July. Maybe spend some time with your family, whatever it is you're doing. Grilling out, maybe like Johnny Mac might be, depending on how his cold subsides. So I hope everybody has a really.
Oof,
what's
brutal.
that? You sound a little better today, Johnny Mac. You sound a little better today. Is it going in the right direction for you?
It's going in the right direction, but it's still a pain in the ass. I will say that.
Still not clear, still not out of the weeds yet for Johnny Mac. But again, hope everybody has a great 4th of July. Johnny Mac, anything stand out to you there though from their over-unders? They had some really good, interesting ones.
From their perspective, I like Tyler Steen versus the field. I think that's going to be interesting. I should have gotten a Bryce Huff 4th quarter sacks. That was a good one. BLG, the pessimist, going under 3. Bo went over. I'm big on Bryce Huff this year, as you know.
Yep.
I think he'll close some games. I'd take the over there. Undrafted rookie free agents on the roster, 0.5. I'm taking the over because you always want to show off. GMs always want to show off, and they're going to keep one. Eli Ricks last year, Josh Sills, Josh Jobe, Reid Blankenship in 2022. They kept 3. Jack Stoll in 2021. You got to go back to the COVID year where they didn't keep somebody. And then even if you go back prior, you had Nate Herbig, you had Bruce Hector and Trey Tullivan, Corey Clement famously. Always keep a undrafted rookie. I don't know who it's going to be, but I'll always take the over there.
Any chance
GMs like to say, look at me. Yeah.
Any chance it's Kendall Milton?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to keep 4 running backs.
He's my kind of back. That's why I say that. I just want a guy that can.
I've been saying it for years. I want a one-cut runner, but they don't seem to have any interest in that. So I think he's more practice.
The running back from Georgia is going nowhere. Bob Brown says. We'll see what they end up.
He'll be on the practice squad, I would think. So yeah, he's probably not going anywhere. But will he be on the initial 53? That's what we're talking about. Probably not. Probably.
Yes. Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing with them. The other guys, that Gabe Hall, I know you brought him up a little bit. I think he could be somebody. I mean, they need depth at that room, so maybe if he can show something.
Yeah, he's a good one. He's a good one. Gabe Hall is a very good one because that's a position where they have an opening, probably. Right. And yeah, he's got some upside. A lot of people thought he'd get drafted. And there's always a surprise because Reid Blankenship was probably last on the list. And look at him now. Spent like $5,000 to get him.
Which in NFL terms is about $1 bill from your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. So, Andre Sam is probably low man on the totem pole, and I just keep seeing his name. I know he's good friends with CJ. CJ's having as a lot of players do this time of year, youth football camp down in Louisiana, I think. But Andre Sam's going to be there. Those two are close. They work out together. I keep hearing his name. Older rookie. They need a safety, and that's where he might factor in, at least as a backup. I'm trying to think of. They don't have a big undrafted class, and that's where PLG is probably playing the odds. They typically have more undrafted guys, but it's a small class, so there's not a lot of opportunities. But I would say Gabe Hall would be the heavy favorite, at least on paper.
John, you know what name has fallen into relative obscurity in the last 2 to 3 weeks?
Who's that?
Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I mean,
the fifth round picks as a whole. I
know
mentioned that a couple of weeks.
I mean, they were like, it was like 5th round 365 on here for a couple of weeks, and now it's like
I mentioned that I try to temper people. I mentioned the absurdity of it,
and they get mad at you in the moment. But I mean, look at where we are now. I think he actually has a chance to at least play this year. Maybe not a lot, but at least get on the field if somebody goes down at that linebacker room or whatever. I mean, last year when we started the season, I don't think we thought we would see Nick Morrow and Zach Cunningham and all the guys we did at linebacker. So I think it's a chance he plays, but he has fallen into that realm, and I'm wondering.
Very slim chance, I would say. I assume,
going too right here, Mike Fittery. No talk about Jalix Hunt. Yeah, it's funny because Mike, I mean, everybody is expecting Jalix to just be a project. Like nobody cares about him this year, which is really weird. He is a 3rd round pick. I mean, that's a premium pick by most people's standards. And they took a project, and we're not talking about him
they talk about him. That's why the Eagles talk about him as a project. Now, if he shows up and he's a natural, maybe Vic will find a role for him.
I like his personality a lot, but that doesn't mean he can play.
And remember, spring work is not for certain positions, and the defensive front is one of those positions.
Yeah,
so
true.
all he was doing in the spring is dropping into coverage occasionally, whereas, the coverage players, they get more of the microscope because that's what we're watching. And the same thing with Trevor Keegan on the offensive side. But you see what the Eagles, they brought in Sharping, as we mentioned. Matt Hennessy, he didn't even move. He didn't even take reps at right guard. Then he got hurt. Anaya Smith struggled as well. Yeah, the 5th round picks are no surprise. Going to have to wait.
Yeah. So we'll see what ends up happening with all these guys. Rashid Mixon, thanks, buddy, for the super chat. We appreciate your viewership. We appreciate your loyalty to the network. We appreciate it, brother. He says, have a happy 4th, everybody. And I will second that comment. I hope everybody has a beautiful 4th of July, gets to spend some time with whoever it is. Maybe it's just yourself. Maybe it's your family. Whoever you want to spend time with, whoever you want to be around. I hope you have a chance to do that. Sit back, relax, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the sunshine. Hopefully we get some good weather all weekend long, but we will not be back here tomorrow. We will not be back here Friday. We will be back here July 8th, which is next Monday. And then it's a 2-week ramp up, Johnny Mac. We got 2 weeks of shows, and then the Eagles are back. They are back for training camp. And from there, it'll really be a sprint to the starting line, really. With the season right around the corner, summer's going to wrap up quick, and the season will be here before we know it.
Yeah, and for the Birds 365 people, that means the YouTube channel. So the YouTube channel is always there for you.
This is no 365, they say. I get it.
Exactly. So that's what that means, and everybody can check out there if you want to see some Eagles content in your downtime.
Yeah, we'll have no new live shows, but I will try and if I have some time here today, I'm going to try and crank some clips out from this show, from the National Football Show, and I'll try and post some stuff out tomorrow and Friday. Just if anybody's laying around or if anybody's going on YouTube, I will post up some content. Hopefully you guys can watch.
There you go. Birds 365. That's what it's for. So, yeah, but everybody enjoy the weekend. Have a happy holiday. Happy 4th of July. And recharge those batteries because when the countdown begins.
Yep, Johnny Mac, and I'll tell you to do the same. Recharge those batteries. We got the season right around the corner. Good stuff from you, my friend. Good stuff from everybody in the chat. JM, Bob Brown, Suplex, Sam, Twiz, Kevin Savard says, John, good for you. You sound much better. Call Jody and yell at him. That should clear you up even more. It's a good one from Kevin Savard. Mike Bittery, SMD Eagles, Eduardo, Mark, Suplex. We appreciate every single one of you for being here. When I say that, I don't say it. I really mean it. I do appreciate all of you guys for being here. You guys make the network work. You make this show work, so we appreciate it. Slager says, happy birthday, America. Good stuff there. So, Johnny Mac, good 4th to you, brother. Recharge the batteries. Hopefully you have a chance to grow out a little bit. I'll catch you next Monday. All right, man?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you next Monday on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365.
the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.